everyone. Today I have with me author Kimberly Rae Jordan. And I forgot to tell you, Kimberly, I couldn't get your book 6. Usually I have the physical book and I say, here it is, but it's on Kindle, so it's on here. But anyway, she is the author of so many books, let's not even go there. But the book that I read was called Guarding Her Heart. And it's the 6th book in a series. And I did not read your other books in that series, but I loved it. So thank you so much for coming on my show to talk to me about it.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, I put out a lot of requests to author. I'm a reader, and I put out a lot of screenwriting requests too, but I put out a lot of authors. And some of them, you know, like when they say yes, I'm like, yay. When you said yes, I was like, yay, she said yes. I was so excited. So I mean, I couldn't believe, I knew you wrote a lot of books. And then I went on your website. I was like, how does she write this many books? How do you write that many books? You must write nonstop. And you have 4 children. You have 4. I have 6. And I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they're getting older, so I can do more stuff now. But, I mean, how did you do it?
Well, I started writing many years ago, back when Love Inspired line first started. So I was writing books for them, like not to publish, but to submit in hopes of publishing. And after quite a few rejections, I kind of let the writing slip away. So when I went back to writing again, I had like 5 or 6 manuscripts completed. So when I first started off, I was able to publish quite quickly. And I wrote in the evenings after I had a day job at the time. I wrote in the evenings after after work, and the kids were in bed, and, you know, just tried to be very consistent in that. And then when I quit my day job to write full time, to be honest, I thought I'd really be able to write more, but it seemed like the more time I had, I don't know where the time went, but still.
Because we have a lot of kids and other things. There are other things to do if you're at home.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, Mom, well, you're home. Can you do this for me? And, oh, Mom, you're home. Can you do that for me? So, but for me, it's just been very consistent about, you know, treating my writing as a job. And that means I do it every day. You know, it's not a matter of, do I feel like writing today? No. I sit down and I write. If it's garbage, I can fix that. Someone once said, you can't fix a blank page. I don't know if that was Nora Roberts or something, but that's kind of what I go by.
Yeah, I've heard
that. If I
don't
have anything on paper, I can't fix it. But even if I write stuff I hate, the next time I read it, I can fix it. So I just have tried to be very consistent about taking the time to write every single day. And I keep very weird hours. And my husband's been very supportive of that, taking care of the kids in the morning, because I write till about 4 in the morning, and then I get up around noon. So it's just those hours are much quieter. Like there's just nothing. There's hardly anyone on Facebook. There's no phone calls,
no emails.
And so for me, I think for me the important thing has been being consistent, writing regularly, and it really helps you to produce if you know each day I'm going to have to sit down and bang out 2,000 or 3,000 words, you know. Yeah. So for me, I think that's really been the key to being able to write as quickly as I do, is just being consistent with it.
Now, you know, as a series, I love talking to you guys that are series authors, because I personally love series, okay? And if I would have had the time, I would have gone back and read them all, you know, the whole series, but I had a lot of interviews lately, and I've read a lot of books. But how are you one of those series? I've talked to a woman who is a series author, and she had 2 series going. Are you one of those people? Like, can you do that?
Well, if you had asked me that question last year, I would have said no. I can only focus on one series at a time. But because I was in box sets with different authors and was needing different types of books for I ended up with 3 series on the go at the same time. And that was a little bit confusing. I've gotten to the point where all my series are slightly interconnected in some ways. Not the first 2 series, but from the Guarding Her Heart series on, they're connected in some way. So it wasn't that I was totally pulling myself out of a series, but it was a bit confusing thinking, and even just which one to work on. Because I was so used to saying, okay, I finished book 3, now I'm starting book 4. But then it's like, okay, I need to do book 5, but I need to do book 2, and I need to finish up book 1. It's something I don't really want to have to do again. I'm kind of cleaning. I finished the one series, like that published in December, except readers are asking for more characters from that book. So I don't know if that series is truly finished. But in the meantime, I've moved on to the next series that I was working on. And the third book for that will be coming out the end of this month. So I'm trying to get back to just having one main series that I'm focusing on.
Well, and that's what this other woman said. I interviewed her a couple months ago, but she said it's kind of like you don't want to say it's a problem because you've got fans, that she had the same thing. You got your fans and they're like, no, write another one of this one. And so you end up with like all these series, but it's a good thing, right? Because that's how invested your fans are in the series that you're working on, and they don't want it to end. And that's a good thing,
It is. And it helps you to know that your characters are real. I mean, as real as they can be, but
yes.
That they become alive to these people, that they want more. And I love that. I mean, as a reader too, I also enjoy the series, knowing that you're going to be able to see the previous characters' lives continue on into, the rest of the stories, as long as nothing bad happens to them. Mm-hmm. I have a problem. I don't like to see anything happen to previous couples.
Right.
But, it's very engaging, and I appreciate that readers stick with you through, through the whole series. And I think it has been key to growing my audience and my readership has been to do the series, because readers do become invested and they're looking for the next book and they're sharing it with their friends. And, it was a piece of advice given to me when I first started out, was write in series. And I've done that. Yeah. And it has, I've enjoyed it because I don't have to say goodbye to the characters when I finish writing a book. I know they'll be back again too, for me as a writer. So, yeah, for me, I think series for an author and a reader are definitely the way to go, especially in the romance genre, Maybe not so much in other genres, but definitely in the romance genre.
Well, I do. I love series, and I read a lot of standalone books, but when I'm reading a series, I just, because now you have me hooked. Like now I got book 6, but I'm like, okay, I want to see what happens. I want book 7. I want to see what happens with this couple. But before we get even into that, I want to get into like your background, because you've had such an interesting life. Your parents were missionaries, right?
Yes.
I've read that. And when I was growing up, that was what I wanted to be. Like my whole life, that's all I ever said. And I was raised in church, and I went to youth groups, and we would go to youth camps, and I don't know if you guys had that, but we used to go in the summertime. We'd go to camps, and I used to always say, I want to be a missionary. I want to be a missionary. And of course, I didn't. But so when I read that, I was like, but you actually got to live the missionary life, and your parents were in Asia, and was that the only place? Like, did you travel around, or did they have one set?
Yes, we were in the Philippines for pretty much all the missionary years. I was there. They took me when I was about a year and a half, and my mom and dad worked in support roles. So my dad, at the time, he worked in radios, and later on, it was computers. And my mom was just she helped with administrative tasks. We lived on a mission center, so there were a variety of tasks. If missionaries were coming in from their allocations, we called them, like the rural areas where they lived, housing had to be prepared, meals, and that sort of thing. So that's what my mom was involved in, a lot of that kind of stuff. Mm. We lived in a rural mission center until I was in grade 11, and then they moved to Manila. And so I was in boarding school for a year, and then we were home on furlough for 1 year. Then we moved back, and we were in Manila, the capital city, until I graduated.
Wow.
They continued to stay there through my brother's graduation, and then they came home in, I think it was, I'm not sure, maybe 1998, 1999. They came back to work they were with Wycliffe Bible translators, so they came back to work in the main office in Calgary here in Canada. But they've since retired, and now they live here with us, so that's very nice. The kids have their grandparents close.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, it was, at the time I didn't know any differently. I mean, that was my life, right? Mm-hmm. And, but as we would come home to Canada, and it was very different because, of course, I didn't know how to shovel snow. And so coming back here and being dumped into these winters was, wow, that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
We weren't used to white Christmases. Our Christmases were green. Yeah. And, it was, there's a lot of adjustment. Mm-hmm. But it's a beautiful country, and it was great to be able to grow up and have a very much wider world view because of that. We did travel around a little bit, but not as missionaries per se. Like, if we were coming back to Canada, sometimes my dad would plan a trip, through Europe just so that we could spend a few days, visit some people that we knew. Because people that lived on the mission center were from everywhere. So we have friends in Australia, and we have friends in Germany, and, so they're all over the world, which is the hard part. Like, when I graduated, I figured I probably wouldn't see many of my classmates ever again because we just kind of scattered. And that was before the time of Facebook. Right. They just kind of scattered. So there's the pros and cons to that sort of life, just like any other life. Yeah. But, my parents were very, they felt that was where God led them. So they happily followed. And, the ministries, it wasn't, the ones translating the Bible, but the reality is the ones that are translating the Bible couldn't have done it with the without support workers, mm-hmm. That were there as well. And we would go out and visit families in these areas where they lived, which was always even more rural than where we were living. Right. So yeah, lots of experiences from my younger years. The first book of the Blackthorpe series, which was Guarding Her Heart, was the one with the mission team that went to the Philippines. So it was really nice to be able to use my experiences and awesome. Just some of my interactions as, growing up there as part of that book. So it was really a book of my heart, just because of where it took place. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And I never really, for some reason, it never crossed my path, the genre of like Christian romance. But when my daughters were in their teen years, I came across a series that was called the Christy Miller series, and I can't remember who wrote it. But anyway, it was really good because it was like a teenage, and I let them, and they became so attached to him. But it kind of helped them with their teenage issues from a Christian point of view. And, at the time, everybody was reading Twilight, I don't know, some other very dark books. Not that I didn't stop them from reading Twilight, but it was like I wanted them to read something else that portrayed a different, like, it doesn't have to be like that kind of a thing, it could be better. And I was, that's when I started to read that kind of stuff. And not that I won't read other books, because of course I do. I read everything. But I love, like, when I sat down to read your book, I was like, I know that this is going to have a message. And I know I'm going to love the message that's going to be in it. And I did. And it does. And that's what I like about it. And that's what I think that is the best thing for anybody out there who also, if they didn't come across that kind of genre, supposedly, like, try it, because you're really going to enjoy the messages. It isn't just a book that doesn't lead to anywhere. It always leads back around to something that you can learn from it. And like I said, since I didn't read the other books, my experience into Alicia was this book. Now, I'm assuming that she was in the other books as a character that everybody else knows, correct?
For Alicia, she was actually in the series. This is where they start to get a little convoluted. There was a 3-book series right before I started the Blackthorpe series, and she was the half-sister in those books. So she was more prevalent in that series, but yeah, they do pop up along the way in the other books. Of course, Marcus was in all of them.
I was thinking that. I get that sense when I'm reading it. It's like you can kind of tell the main character that's going to be, that's brought along, and I can tell that the readers already knew him and, already were probably attached to him and to his character. But what I did learn from her was that, as we grow older, like the lies, like her little lie that then becomes this big lie. And we don't pay attention to that. And as I was reading it, I was like really understanding, like, she wasn't trying to hurt anybody. She wasn't trying to, and I've had things in my life that I'm like, it's better people don't know. It's better. But, look what had her snowballed into. And then she had to learn that lesson. And, is she, do you have a book 7 on this?
Well, see, I wasn't really planning one, but then once people got hold of Meredith, Marcus's sister, of course now they're asking for her story. So I hadn't planned for one, but now I'm thinking maybe I need to. And it's hard because you can't write a book with just 2 characters. Right. Like you need the secondary characters there. So sometimes those secondary characters, something about them really resonates with some of the readers. And so then you start getting these requests. Are you going to write, this story of so-and-so? And so in this case, it's Meredith. They want her story. And so, now I have to figure out, do I continue this series? Do I kind of do a little spin-off with some more, it's in my head, and I just got to somehow work out. And sometimes, like, people are asking also from a previous series for a brother who showed up in one of those books, and it's like, he just hasn't told me his story yet. Like, I know people want his story, and I thought he was actually going to end up in this series, Marcus's series, in a prior book, but he didn't. The girls didn't. The ladies in those books, they're like, nope, that's not my man. So I'm like, okay, I don't know who his girl is, So I said, until he kind of tells me his story, I'm not going to force a story about him just, for the sake of having a story, but it may come to me. Like the series I'm working on now, the storyline for book, not the book was like, I think it's book 4, just sort of came to me, and out of the blue, and all of a sudden I'm focusing all my attention on this story, and I was like, wait, I can't, I just need to jot down some notes because I still have one book before this story. But that's kind of how the stories come to me, is like out of the blue. It's like this character just kind of whispers to me, this is what happened to me. And then it just kind of goes from there, and so I'm waiting, for those stories to kind of come to me, and sometimes they take a little longer than others.
And that's what was my question was. So when you're writing, like when you decide to write this book with Alicia as the main character, did you decide, like, did it just get revealed to you of what her lesson was going to be, or is it like you write it and it just flows and you're like, oh, that's her, that's...
Well, it's interesting. I went through a bit of a process with her because I knew from book 2 of the previous series who she was going to end up with. I knew she was going to end up with Marcus. So I wrote like 6 books between when I realized that and Marcus's story, because I knew Marcus's story needed to be the last one. So I had time, but still, when I started to get into her book, her story, I knew that she, like when I first introduced her, I knew that she had stuff she was hiding. And I knew she had her reasons for what she was hiding. And I thought I knew what she was hiding. But you know what? Partway through the book, I'm like, you know what? This isn't, it's like she told me, actually, I lied to you. This isn't what happened to my mom. This is really what happened to my mom.
Wow.
And so it was just kind of like, even I almost felt like, well, wow, I'm even finding out that what I thought was true for her wasn't. I know it sounds weird, like I'm talking like they're real, but when I'm in the midst of the story, you know, so in a sense, I, as an author, kind of felt like she lied to me because I switched I had to change up what happened with her mother, and my mom reads my rough drafts. And I was talking with her and I said, Mom, you've already read this part and it, you know, you thought this was what happened, but I had to change that part. So now when you read more, you're going to be sitting there going, what happened to her mom? You know, like, so it was, I would prefer to know everything up front, but that's not the way it happens, it seems, when I get into it. And, you know, parts of me flow into the characters as well, you know, and lessons I've learned or those around me have learned, you know, that feeds into the characters that I create. But I would say there's probably a little bit of me in most of the characters that I write about, just because, you know, they're flowing from me. So, you know, as they're coming out of me, you know, they take bits of me with them. Right. But, you know, when I first started writing in this genre, to go back to your comments about your daughters, when I was a teen, I loved romance, absolutely loved romance. And I was a voracious reader. Like, I could read a book in a day. Yeah. But all that was available to me really were like when we were on furlough, you know, I could go to the library and get books, but the books that were available to me were not the good Christian books for girls, you know? So when I began writing, I wasn't sure what to write, but I just kind of wrote these stories, and then the Love Inspired line came and was looking for submissions. So I'm like, hey, there's a place for these types of books now. And then when I left writing for a while and I came back, and that's when I realized that I wanted to really pursue it. And I did it at first to pay off some bills. It's like, I'm going to give this a whirl. I need some extra cash to pay off some bills. And then I started getting these emails from readers like, your stories touched me. God really spoke to me. And I'm like, but they're just a romance. Like, you know, like I kind of viewed them as just an alternative if people wanted a kind of clean romance with the little, you know, the Christian characters. I never really thought past that. And it was a real eye-opening experience for me to realize, you know what, there are people who only read this type of book. They may not even read the Bible. So if I can give them a message, if I can steer them back to the Bible, if I can steer them back, you know, to surrounding themselves, you know, with good things that will feed, you know, help feed them spiritually, like, I have to do that. You know, God gave me this opportunity, and I logged onto my Facebook, which I'm really bad about doing sometimes, and found a message from a woman whose 80-year-old or 82-year-old father had been reading my books. And just as she had been reading my books, you know, and that's what I really wanted, was books that readers of all ages could enjoy. You know, that a mother could pass it to her daughter and not be afraid that there's going to be objectionable material in the book. I want people to know when they pick up a Kimberly Rae Jordan book that it's going to have a message of love, of course, but also faith, you know, and family, and just, you know, positive things. There might be bad things that happen to the people in the book, but hopefully it shows them overcoming those, you know, using, you know, strength from God and advice from others to just overcome those things in life. So even though it started out as kind of, well, I'm writing fluff, you know, it quickly changed for me. You know, God opened my eyes and just kind of showed that he can use anything, you know, as a vessel to get his message across. And I'm thankful that he's chosen to use my books. And now I write for one person. I mean, I write for God's glory too, but I write, if only one person gets a message from my book, I've achieved, you know, success. You know, if only one person is touched, because that may be the message that one person needs. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity, you know, to have a chance to share what God lays on my heart, I guess.
Yeah, and
so.
they focus on story. Like a lot of times I'll read romance and and the stuff they put in there, the stuff I don't want to read, more explicit stuff. Sometimes it feels like it's just put in there for shock. I want to say value, like,
Mhm.
and that's why I wanted my daughters to read something other than that because it was like, okay, but I don't want to. I don't know. I'm like you, I guess. I mean, when I read a romance novel, I want it to be a romance novel, and I want it to be like that's what touches me about it, And
Yeah.
that's why I was so happy when you said you'd come on, and I was just like, that is like you said, when I would read a book and I'd say, my daughters would be like, "Can I read that book?" And I'm like, "No, you can't read that book." I don't even want to go there a lot of times. Like when they were little, I just wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't have it around just so I didn't have to go there with that,
Right.
But now that my one daughter has children, and I was interviewing a screenwriter the other day, and I said, "You got to see this movie." And she's like, "Can I have it on when my boys are around?" And I was like, she's now and I was like, well, I don't know. It's maybe not, but it's like you think that way as a mom. You really want like, and I'm happy to see that she's passing that down. It's like I don't just want to expose my kids to stuff that's not going to be, not that just for the sake of that not pertaining to a story, like it,
Yeah.
you know. So anyway, that is what I loved. I knew that when I think that it's the knowing. If you have that genre out there, you know it. Okay, you don't have to read it and then say your daughter says, "Can I read this book?" I don't know. Let me finish it. I'll let you know. It's like I know you're going to be able to read it. Here you go, and and you're going to be happy about it because, like you said, they have this like built-in story that, and it's not you preaching it. Like they're seeing it in action. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's not you. It's like the character. It's like not me as saying to my kids, you know what, lying is a really bad idea. It always comes back to bite you. There's never a good there's never a good lie. It's not just the me lecturing them. It's like they get to see it in action. Why isn't lying a good idea? Well, this is why. She had to go through this, and then she had to go through this, and it just and in the end, everybody got to know about it anyway. So.
Yeah.
So it's that's and I love that. So we get to I get introduced to Marcus in this book. I know he has a backstory, but you did such a good job of. I didn't feel like I couldn't read it, and I know that is hard because I've talked to other series authors, and I know that is your biggest challenge is getting those books to be standalone series, so that they don't have to go back, right? I mean, do you find that as, like having to weave in bits and pieces?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it can be, yeah, I purposely left Marcus a bit of an enigma throughout the series. Like, he was involved, like, his cousin is in one of the other books, so people knew their history, what happened to their family, why Marcus ended up so devoted to his sister, and, so people were sort of aware of that from previous, but his interactions were not, they got more intense as it got closer to his book, and but he was still. I left him purposely pretty much just like a very private character, so that when it came to his story, people already knew he was a reserved, man who guarded his privacy, who, didn't involve a lot of people in his life, and that he had just one or two people that he really trusted, with him and his sister, and but yes, it's a challenge when you have like in my long series that I did before called Home to Collingsworth. In there was a character that I introduced right from the start that I knew her book was going to be book 4, and I'm like, oh my goodness, the readers are going to hate her. Because when I introduced her, she was not a nice person. Like, she was, she enjoyed drinking and she enjoyed smoking. She liked going to the bars. She was a singer, and I knew she was going to rub readers the wrong way. But I also knew she had a story, that there were reasons for why she was living her life the way she did. And so when it came time to write her book, man, I'm just like, Lord, please let people pick up the book. Even though they're not thrilled with her as a character, she flirted a lot through the series. And I said, just please let them pick up the book. Give her a chance, let them give her a chance. And one of the reviews on that book said how much they disliked the character, but they picked up the book anyways because it was the next in the series, and it ended up being their favorite.
Oh.
And for me, to be able to show a character one way and still have readers fall in love with her as you reveal her, to why she was that way, to me, that I was just so happy because she had a message too. Like, her life was the way it was because of things and decisions she'd made that she didn't feel she could come back from.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was so happy. That one review, I tell you, I don't read my reviews, to be honest. If there's readers, I don't read my reviews because they can affect me greatly. Even the positive ones.
Right.
They're like, oh, I love that she did this in this book, and all of a sudden I'm trying to recreate that in the book that I'm writing, and it's like, no, I can't. So I don't read my reviews by and large. I have people who read them for me, so if there's an ongoing thread of something that I need to be aware of, they let me know.
Right.
But but I did read that review because I was so happy because I'm like, they got her, And so, yeah, when you're writing a series and you're building up to a character, and you're dropping little bits in, sometimes it can backfire on you too, because you can say something about a character and then you get to their story and you're like, whoa, I revealed this about that character, but oh no, what do I do? Because it doesn't really fit the story I want to write, So it can backfire on you, and I'm a bad one for keeping notes.
I was going to say, what do your notes look like? Like, do you have charts? Do you have family charts to keep them straight?
I hadn't. Prior to this series, I hadn't done that. The current series I'm working on, I have a notebook that looks like this, and I've got pages for each book that's going to be in the series. But the previous series I didn't, and I'm constantly looking for last names of characters, and I introduced Kelsey in Marcus and Alicia's book. When I first introduced her, she was just a receptionist, right? So I just grabbed a name out of thin air for her. I didn't give her a last name. I didn't give anything to her. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, she's coming into a character. What was her name again? And I'm going back trying to find her name. And so I'm trying to be better. But when I'm in the middle of writing, I don't think to stop and make a note that I named, the next door neighbor, Mr. Joe Blow.
Right.
And so I'm scrambling to find what I named people,
Yes.
So I'm trying to keep better notes, especially because this is a family series that I'm working on now. So they are really interconnected.
Right. There's a lot of family members,
in this next one, there's going to be a total of 10 books. Wow. So that's a lot for me to have to keep track of. So I decided I have to be better about it this time around.
Well, you can be sure of one thing. Your fans will know. They'll be sending you little emails. By the way, you got this person's name,
Oh, yes.
Because readers, they're pretty intense. I know I can be the same way when I'm reading something, something like that too. It's like, wait a second, what happened in that one, So.
Yeah. And you don't want that. I mean, you want your characters to have a smooth reading experience. You don't want to jar them out of it by having, it happens even with, editors and people reading your book. Stuff slips through, especially because your mind knows what it's supposed to be reading, know, and so it inserts the wrong character name or, but yeah, you do hear from the readers about stuff like that. And then I feel bad because it's like I didn't want to interrupt your reading experience with that.
Right.
But we're only human and stuff is going to slip by. So, you thank them, you make the correction. It's easy to do with Kindle. You just make the correction and then it gets uploaded. So I'm grateful for that, Yeah. But we do try and put out the best product possible, but oh well, sometimes we just miss the little ones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was another question. So you have them coming out in paperback up until book 4. And then, so what is the process for that? Is it an eventual? Is it like you release them in Kindle and then they go to print. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's, 99% of my sales are ebook sales.
Really?
It's very small percentage that buy my series books in paperback.
Right.
I think it's just the type of book, honestly. It's, for a lot of people, it's a read once and return if it's in Kindle Unlimited, or it's just a read one. So I don't think people want to buy the paperbacks for that, because they are more expensive. I mean, we can't get away from that extra cost of doing print.
Right.
It's one of those things I'm trying to be better at. I'm working on a couple of the paperbacks, getting them formatted, getting the covers fixed for them. But it's more of a process than doing a Kindle, a Kindle version. The Kindle book is much easier to get up. The paperback, the formatting, doing the cover, all that takes more time. And sometimes I'm just like, I'd rather be writing.
Well, and isn't that exact? I mean, that's why a lot of people do use Amazon and Kindle and self-publish through Amazon, because they're like, I don't want to do the other stuff. I just want to keep writing, and their fans are begging them for more and more. And I guess it's an easier way for you, especially because you've got all these books coming out. Right? Some authors write a book a year. But you have a constant flow of books. So it's really, And
I think that's the writing quickly. Writing in a series helps with that, because the characterization tends to build in the previous book. So that you've already got that ready to go in the next book. You know the characters. It's much easier to write them because you know them from having written them in previous books. But it's that the people that write only one book a year, I don't think it's that they're only capable of writing one book a year, but when they're coming from the traditional publisher, where they only required one book a year.
Under contract, yes.
That's all they wrote.
Yes.
But now some of them have come over into the indie publishing, and they're like, what do you mean I got to write more than one book a year, But it's like, you can do it. Like, you can do it. It's just a matter of, adapting. Because the indie publishing world is very different from the traditional one. And, it is, I was given a few pieces of advice when I started out, and one of them was publish quickly, so your name stays in front of on the bestseller lists, and the readers see your name frequently. And the other one was write in series. And so I've done that, and also stick to one genre, which I've also done.
Nice.
And, those were three things that, well, there were a couple more, but those were the important ones to me. And I took those to heart, and I ran with them. And, the paperback publishing, that's kind of my goal this year, to try and have the paperbacks release closer to the ebook release.
Right.
But I'm 2 books behind on the Blackthorpe series, and I'm like 3 books behind on the current series I'm on. So I've got a little bit of catching up to get people to help with the formatting and stuff like that. But it is my goal to be better about that, because I do have readers that do read the paperbacks.
Yeah, I think it's nice. Yeah, it's nice to have. I love books, and I love physical books, but I will read Kindle traveling. Because one time I got stopped at the airport, they said my bag was too heavy, and they opened it up, and it was filled with books. And they just looked at me, and I was like, I'd packed less clothes and more books. And then as I'm carrying these books through the airport, I was like, I need a Kindle. It occurred to me that I needed a Kindle. But I love physical books. That's just me. I like laying down. I like reading it like that, But I will read Kindle. I mean, I have nothing against Kindle. I think book lovers love books, per se, But like you said, for your kind of readers, like, you're also getting them out, and then they're like, yeah, I want to read them on my Kindle because I can get them quicker, and so there is there is 2 thoughts to that. But my last question for you is, how, can you turn your brain off? Okay, so at 4 a.m. you go to bed, right? So you're probably tired, I would assume.
Yeah.
You're probably tired. But then, does your brain, when you wake up, are you itching to get back there? You're like, oh, I just thought of something, I can't wait to get back. Do you ever, go that you're not thinking about what's going on?
Probably not. The characters are always. I mean, if I'm focused on the kids or something like homework or that, then they tend to go back.
Right.
But if I'm washing dishes, if I'm driving, we moved out of the city, so I've had a lot more driving. So when I'm driving, those thoughts come to mind, and I try and keep them in my mind till I can jot them down. I found that my writing went more smoothly if I did think about the characters during the day, if I took the time to allow them to tell me what was coming next, so that when I sat down, it's not like, okay, now what do I write? Mm-hmm. Because I've already been having conversations with them throughout the day. So, when I would sit down to write, then it would flow more easily. And sometimes I'm anxious to get to writing, and sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, I still don't know what's coming next. I don't want to write. I'm not sure what to do. And usually then I hope that I'm reading a really good book, because good writing inspires me. And it kind of fills me up to the point where it's like, okay, I feel good about, I don't know how to explain it, but usually if I'm reading a good book at the same time I'm writing, it really helps me to want to match that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I want my readers to experience what I'm experiencing from this book, and how can I create that?
Yeah, probably
I tend to write in layers. Like my first draft, I just write pretty much straight through, and it's very bare. Mm-hmm. I go back and layer in more description and, like stuff like that on my revisions and editing. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, my characters are always there. And it's, I don't know how to, it is hard to explain to people, that you,
you're like, they're here, I know what, but you must carry around a lot of, like, must have pen and paper, like, because...
Yeah, or my notepad on my phone. I'll drop messages on there.
Because you don't want to have a good thought and then be like, hours later, be like, what did I think of that? Because that's how my brain goes, You
don't want to lose that inspiration if it comes to you. I have had that happen. I will say I have had that happen, and it's very annoying. You're sitting there going, I remembered this, like, why can't I... But... And sometimes it'll still come back to me. Other times it's just gone.
You're like, wow.
And it's like, okay, well, missed that one.
I know. You're like, I'll get another good idea. I just know it.
Hopefully. But yeah, they're always there.
Well, it was so much fun talking to you. I really am happy that you were on here. And I'm so happy for all your fans to see you and get to, experience you and your story. And as a reader, I love talking to authors. And that's kind of, Oprah was kind of my inspiration, because when I had my little kids, and she would do that book of the month, I used to be, I'm a reader. I'm like, a month? Like, I want to do one every other day.
Exactly.
But what she showed me was how much I loved when she talked to the authors, because she asked the questions that I wanted to know. Because readers want to talk, they want that connection. And now it's awesome because they actually do get to you through Facebook and Twitter. I don't know if you're on Twitter yet, but, like, I'm not really a Twitter person. But, like, they get that little bit of, interaction with you. But, then actually getting to speak with you, it's like I'm living my dream, because I get to read the books and I get to talk to you about them. So I'm really happy about that.
Well, I'm normally, like I said, I don't have many pictures of myself out there, and this is my first video interview ever, so I was a little nervous about this, but, when I saw your request, usually if I'm asked to do something, I have to think about it, but when I read your request, I'm like, you know what, yes. Let's just go with this. Let's say yes, so it's been a pleasure for me. I've really enjoyed this. You've made my first interview painless.
Yay!
So thank you so much for that. And I appreciate readers like you, your support of authors like myself, who just want to tell our stories and are so happy to hear when they find a home in a reader's heart too.
Yes.
So,
yes, and you have a standing invitation. Anytime you come out with a book series or something you want to talk about, you know where to find me. And just, because I'm always here and I always love talking about it. So, anytime you want to come on, you are welcome, and we'll discuss books. So.
Well, that sounds good.
Okay, well, you have a great day, Kimberly. Thank you so much.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.